Day one of Falcons Minicamp was today, so we're going to recap it for you guys. I've got some takeaways, I've got some injury updates, plus we got some juicy quotes on Bijan Robinson I want to share with you all. Now, before we get to all that good stuff, I do want to remind everyone that we are trying to beat our like record on today's video, which is 300 likes. That's the last time we reached that number, May 26th. So help us beat that number today. Hit the thumbs up button if you have not already. Now, the first item I want to get to is a Grady Jarrett update. We've gotten some updates and snippets of information over the last few weeks, especially during OTAs, but unfortunately, Grady Jarrett was not participating during Falcons Minicamp. I'm not concerned about it, though. He underwent ACL surgery back in November, so it was towards the second half of the season, which usually points to a training camp return. Whereas if you get injured very early in the year, usually you're able to return for spring practices. But Grady Jarrett, who's going to turn 31 years old, or who just turned 31 years old back in April, entering year number 10 in the NFL. There's no reason to push it. It is June. There's not a meaningful game until September. He's up there in the age column. He's on the wrong side of 30, coming off a major knee injury, and there's no contact. There is nothing that defensive linemen can do really during these glorified flag football sessions. There's no reason to see Grady Jarrett on the field. So no concern for me whatsoever. Of course, in a perfect world, he would be out there, but we don't need to see Grady Jarrett in June. I am excited to see what Jarrett can bring to the table, though, in 2024. Last year, through half of the season, 23 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He led the Falcons in sacks back in 2022 with 6 sacks, and he's going to join, I think, a really exciting defensive line. It may not be filled with household names, but there's some optimism about Zach Harrison entering year 2. David Onyemata, quietly one of the best nose tackles in football. And then Grady Jarrett has been one of the best pass-rushing interior defensive linemen for the last half-decade or so. But I think Atlanta really needs a big year from Grady Jarrett. They were not able to address pass rusher very much in free agency. Didn't really get a true pass rusher until round 3 of the NFL draft in Braylon Trice. So they're going to need their proven commodities like Grady Jarrett to bring everything they've got in 2024, because they're already so skinny elsewhere in the pass rushing department because they didn't make any additions, like I said, in free agency and not until round 3 of the NFL draft. Now we're going to look at Bijan Robinson's role up next on the show, but who is your favorite Falcons defender of all time? We asked this question on the show a few weeks ago, and we picked up a handful of new subscribers since then, so I thought we could run it back again. So let me know who your favorite defender from the Atlanta Falcons all time is, because Grady Jarrett, quietly, he should be one of them for a handful of you watching. Second item now, let's talk about Bijan Robinson's role, because last we heard from Bijan was they are looking at a Christian McCaffrey type role for Bijan Robinson. And obviously, that had Falcons fans foaming at the mouth. Raheem Morris today said, in the simplest form you can put it, get the ball to Bijan as much as possible in the most ideal situations possible. Morris is definitely winning the press conferences. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he's always been a very well-spoken man, and he's always very interesting to listen to. And, you know, that's great and all, don't get me wrong, but the number one thing is, of course, wins. And, well, you can't win anything in the offseason. We have to wait till the regular season. The guy's winning the press conferences because that is something Falcons fans needed to hear. Like, the exact opposite was said last year with Arthur Smith saying, we're not doing this for your fantasy football team. And I understand that, but also, if Bijan's good at fantasy football, that means the Falcons are doing pretty well offensively too, because you can't have one or the other. Bijan Robinson, though, let's talk about what that means. Trying to get him the ball as much as possible in ideal situations. Bijan is not a niche back, right? He's not just a goal line back. He's not just a receiving back. Bijan Robinson, coming out of Texas, was one of the most well-rounded backs the NFL had seen, probably since Saquon Barkley. And we saw a good reason as to why last year. 976 yards on the ground, an average of 4.6 a carry, and 487 through the air. So if you want to talk about getting Bijan the ball in the most ideal situations as possible, let's just start with getting him the ball more. Because I think almost every situation is ideal for Bijan. He may not be the most exquisite goal line back. Like, he's not a bowling ball on 3rd and 1 that's just going to be Mike Tolbert and run into the back of some guys and push the pile forward for an extra yard or two. But step one in ideal situations is every situation is ideal for Bijan. So get him the ball more. Last year, Bijan ranked 9th in rushing average with a minimum of 200 attempts. So, yes, he may not have gotten to that elusive 1,000-yard benchmark for the way we evaluate running backs, but the man was efficient, that's for sure. Also, he wasn't just good on the ground. Through the air, Bijan Robinson, he ranked 4th in receiving yards amongst all running backs. So Bijan Robinson, top 10 in rushing average, 4th in receiving yards. This is a very small club that Bijan finds himself in, of being top 10 in both of those categories. The only other guys in that list, Christian McCaffrey, who I think is pretty good, Breece Hall, and James Cook. This is a good club to be in right here. If you're in any club with Christian McCaffrey, you are in a good club. So yeah, I think step one for getting Bijan in more ideal situations is just get him the ball more. The guy showed you last year he was very effective as a rusher on the ground and a really good receiving back as well. Now, if you want to get into the technical, nitty-gritty analytics world, first down last year, Bijan Robinson on all first down carries averaged 4.5 yards touched. Second down, 5 yards. Third down, 3.3. So you can make an argument that ideal situations mean getting the ball on first and second down a bit more. Third down being 3.3 is a little bit misleading because usually if you're running the ball on third down, it's 3rd and short, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and you're usually facing a lot more heavy boxes, and that does not equate to big, long rushes. That usually equates to just trying to get the minimum, trying to get to the line to gain. So don't look at 3.3 and think, Bijan's not a good third down back. Now, if it's 3rd and 3 and he gets you 3.3 yards, I would say he was a pretty good third down back there. He got you the first down. Now, let me ask this question before we get to the rest of today's show. Over or under 1,000 rushing yards for Bijan Robinson? Drake London was asked today what's going to be different about the 2024 Falcons offense than the 2023, and he said, quote, the ball is going to be in the air a lot more. So I think that you can make a slight argument of Bijan's role may not be too extensive, but I would just say Bijan's role is going to be just as large as you can expect it to be. It's guys like Tyler Algier, RB2s, who may not get as many touches as an Arthur Smith-led offense. Third note I want to get to coming out of day one of minicamp, some injury notes altogether. It's minicamp. I don't want anyone to reach for the panic button or to make big conclusions out of players not being on the field, but from what I heard, there were 4 players not participating. Running back / fullback Robert Burns, he is just competing for a practice squad spot, let's be honest. David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, you got 2 interior defensive linemen over the age of 30, and they're playing flag football. They don't really need their services during this time. And then Kevin King. This one is a little bit different than the other 3 because flag football requires defense, and Kevin King had a good opportunity to grab a roster spot. Unfortunately, we haven't seen Kevin King play much football for the last 2-3 seasons, and I know the Falcons were banking on some of these veterans like King and Hamilton to provide some good depth for a secondary that saw 0 additions made during the NFL draft. I think cornerback room may be Atlanta's biggest gamble for 2024. Like, they're putting a lot of eggs in the Clark Phillips developmental basket. And I don't hate that decision because I do think Clark Phillips will take a good step forward in year 2. But there's not a lot of good depth after that, right? Like, Antonio Hamilton had a good year with the Cardinals last season. Kevin King had a good year with the Packers in, 2019. It's been a while. And the rest of the room doesn't have a lot of youth to it. So this is definitely a gamble by the Falcons going really skinny at cornerback when they don't have a ferocious pass rush that's going to force the quarterback to get the ball out of his hands quickly. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you want more Falcons minicamp updates, make sure to subscribe. Hit that sub button down below.